VFW, will you please present the flags? Okay, you may be seated. I hope I'm loud enough. Welcome. I'm glad to see this many people in the hall. It's fabulous. And we're doing things a little uniquely here. With the assistance, open the Bible, please. We'll have the flag salute. That's a signal for everybody to stand. Please stand.
Leahy.
Here.
Vice President Tom Watson.
Here.
Lecturer Jane Vanashik.
Here.
Assistant Steward John LaSalle.
Here.
Lady Assistant Steward Allison Badwell.
Absent.
Chaplain Adelia Badwell.
Present.
Treasurer Mary Baronis. Secretary Christine Drake. Gatekeeper LaDonna Olantic. Pomona Cindy Magalinsky.
Present.
Flora LaDonna Olantic. Executive Committee Keith Badwell.
Present.
Ben Badwell. And John LaSalle. Roll call.
Thank you very much. Adelia, I'm going to turn it over to our worthy chaplain, Adelia.
Let us pray. Almighty Father, Mother of God, we give thanks that we are meeting here to celebrate 85 years of Grange activity. May we recognize your part in making this happen. Send us forth continuing the work established by our forerunners, and let us not lose sight of your influence upon our endeavors. We beseech thee to bless the officers and members of this Grange and all connected with the order from the highest to the lowest degree, and grant them prosperity. We ask all in thy holy name. Amen.
Now I'd just like to recognize our state Grange president, Corey W. Spence, Vice President Christopher Schutek. Let's see. First of all, I forgot that Kathy Gibson is our National Lady Assistant Steward. Please rise. Thank you, Kathy. And her husband, Glenn. And let's see, Lisa and Matt Johnson. Lisa is our secretary. He is on the Agricultural Commission. Amber and Randy Vale. Randy is our state treasurer, and Amber is the co-director of our library. Kathy Peterson and husband Bob. Kathy is on the executive committee, and Bob is on the Assembly of Demeter Committee for the National Grange. And then in the front row, we have several deputies. One is Ruth Ellen Henry out of Greenfield. Kristen Paulson is out of Rhode Island as a deputy, and Christopher's mother, Diane, remember God. So, thank you for coming. These are some of our offices. There are other officers listed too. So, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the veterans especially, and they know why. They are very supportive of the Grange, and we are of them. Yes, we will have a Memorial Day parade. After this is done, then that's planning. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sarah and her group for an hour of entertainment. And introduce your people, please.
If they behave, I will.
Well, you know.
They gotta keep up. Of course, we will bring in all the introductions in just a moment. But first things first, we gotta fiddle around just a little bit.
jumping club.
Move your chairs.
There you go.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, this is such a great space to be in, right? Yeah, and keeping the history of this beautiful Grange alive and going and passing it to the next generation is what this is all about. But my music is also the same thing. You know, I'm an old timer. I'm an old timer. I have been playing this instrument for 45 years now. And it's my job to tell the story of those that came before me, from all of the old timers I learned from. Now, I happen to be looking out here, and I see your feet moving. Now, I know a lot of dancing went on in here in this space, didn't it? Contra dances, square dances. Yeah, square dances. So we're going to keep it rolling for you with a little square dance music, yeah? particular Grange Hall does bring back many memories for me. As I was a child, my grandparents would throw me in a camper and take me all over New England, and we would travel and enter fiddle contests. Some of those fiddle contests took place on a stage just like this today. So it does kind of bring me back to an era where fiddle contests were every weekend. We'd go to Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, sometimes venture up into Canada. And Canada is where the real fiddlers are. Oh, they know. He's like, yes, Canada, oh Canada, yeah. The fiddlers up there are phenomenal, but also the piano players. Playing the piano in Canada is sometimes more important than being a fiddler. So now, Joe, you've got to live up to that. Everybody, this is Joe Juck. Joey has been with me almost 17 years now. Yeah, as a group. So we're going to let him kick it off with a couple of French Canadian tunes. Yes, here we go. We just start with the contests, I got to meet so many amazing, wonderful musicians. And many of those musicians maybe did not play the violin or the piano, but they played other things. Everybody, this is Keith Da Silva, my husband. And he's gonna bring it real old school right now. We're playing the spoons. That is an instrument each and every one of you has at home. Look at.
I play the spoon.
Do you have them with you?
Oh, no, I don't have my phone.
Okay.
I will.
Yeah. Ready? You gotta say something.
Go ahead.
You sure?
I figured it.
Okay. Well, we just got through the month of March. And when you're a Polish fiddler, there's no better time to be busy than the month of Irish music, right? We played so much great Irish music, but there's so many great tunes I would love to be able to share with you. So I am going to take it down just a little bit on this next song and play an Irish tune called the Sleeping Tune. And then we're going to go into some traditional jigs and reels. And if anybody does do the Irish step dancing, there's plenty of floor space right up here. She's gonna. Well.
Hall. And many of us know it's an old building. And it's $1 million renovation. Hey, well, my brother, who is in the audience, plays accordion. And our parents celebrated our 25th anniversary here. Square dance, of course. I mean, really. So it was a day when women wore garter belts and long nylons. Not pantyhose anymore, you know. So I'm down in the 3-holer out back, trying to pull up everything. And my father's at the top of the stairs yelling for me. Well, off went the nylons, and I don't know where the garters went. But I made it back up the stairs. I said, "What do you want, Dad?" He says, "We need a woman up there." So I ended up dancing without the nylons, and I don't know where the garters ever went to. And the 3-holer went because we have beautiful facilities now. But that was one of the things for here. But my brother is in the audience, and I owe a lot to him because he played accordion, and I used to stick his keys, period. And next to him is his lady friend Avis, and my youngest daughter Elizabeth. And in front of them is my oldest daughter and her husband Carlton. So, the family. We don't play music together because I read music and he plays by ear. And I said to him one day, "You know, it's hard playing by ear." So go for it, Sarah. I added to your silliness.
All right, your special request is coming up. Are you ready for the Alabama Jubal? I couldn't even get it out. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. began on this instrument 45 years ago. I'm still loving every second of it, but I never forget where I came from. My first instrument was not a violin. It was a Cracker Jack box with a ruler on the end of it. That's how I learned how to hold my violin. I learned with a method called the Suzuki method. Anybody familiar with that? Yeah.
All my 5 children took it.
Okay. So you know that I'm actually a violinist.
Starting out with Twinkle.
Twinkle, twinkle, that's right. And it was a method that really encouraged the parents to also play. I was 3 and a half. I didn't have the discipline that I really needed to be able to practice, or even withstand a half an hour lesson. So my mom would take half of the lesson, and then I would take the other half. And finally, I was on like Perpetual Motion or on one of those songs, probably number 4 in the book. My mom was still on Twinkle. The teacher said, "It's okay, Donna, you can quit now." but I am a classical musician, and I love classical music, and we're going to give you a little sample of one right now. But you know, I do want to answer that ever-evolving and asked question of me, what is the difference between the violin and the fiddle? And so the violin has a brown neck, and the fiddle has a red neck. I'm making Joe work extra hard today. And you know what that means? It's time for the accordion. Polka time. Yeah, I grew up in a household, a Polish household, where every Saturday morning, thank you, dziękuję, where every Saturday morning, Grandma would be bopping around the kitchen, mopping the floor, and Happy Louie would be on the radio. And I often wondered, is Grandma bopping around because she loves mopping the floor, or is it because Happy Louie's on? And Happy Louie is just happy music. Polish music is happy music. So Joe, let's make them smile, shall we? Okay. What are you gonna do? face. It brings a smile to everybody's face, right? Brings a smile to everybody's face. You know what even is more important is the fact that Joey is playing an accordion that was gifted to him. Let me tell you a little story, Ruth. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay, so, you know, when we're in the community, we get to meet so many different wonderful musicians, whether it's in passing or we play at the same venues. And when you're in the Polish field, you tend to all know each other, right, Joe? And I found out that a wonderful accordion player lived right down the street from me. And a friend told us, hey, don't you know that Leo Morowski lives right down the street from you? I had no idea. I hopped on my bicycle and I drove my bike down to his house, and he happened to be outside, and I said, are you Leo? And he says, yes. I said, I hear you play the accordion. He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm Sarah and I play the fiddle. We got to get together. So the very next day we went to Leo's house and we sat on his back porch and we talked music and we played music. Well, I know that Joe kind of knew who he was, but we kind of all came together, and for a number of years, we would ask Leo to come out and join us with some of our performances. Now, to let you know, Leo was the house accordionist at the Munich house. If you ever went to the Munich house and there was an old timer playing the accordion, that was Leo. But Leo got sick. And he wasn't able to play anymore. And he ended up moving with his wife to a assisted living facility, which is also right down the street from my house. And we would go there and perform for the residents, but we would always make it a special point to go and see Leo in his room, because at this point he wasn't well enough to come down and play in the activities. And so we finally got a call from his son, and the son said, Sarah, it's time. So I called Joey, who lives out in West Warren, or Warren, either one, they're all the same. And I said, how quickly can you get here? Because we're on our way to go see Leo. So Joe hopped in his car and off we went. He made it to Westfield in record time. And we went up to Leo's room, and it was very evident that the time had come. And we started playing Ave Maria and Amazing Grace and all the songs that pull on the heartstrings and make the tears come. Keith might have even cried too. We'd known Leo for so long, but we knew that this was his time and that he was peaceful. And we're getting ready to leave, and we hear Leo, not even opening his eyes, mutter a couple of words. In the way, he kept saying, in the way. And we're all just kind of like, this is interesting. And Joey says, I know exactly what he wants. He wants a polka. And they're called, They're Always in the Way. Now this tells you who Leo was. They're always in the way. They're always in the way. What she's got a lot. They're always in the way. I won't sing the other verses to you. But if you're Polish, you know. And Joey says, okay, I know what he wants. And here comes Joey. They're always in the way. And wouldn't you know it, Leo started singing, started smiling a little. He raised his hand and he played the air accordion like nobody's business. Wow. Amazing. Wow. His family got this on video. It was amazing. He left us with a laugh. He left us with a smile. And that's why we always want to play a polka in honor of Leo when we use his accordion. He could have given that to anybody. He could have sold it. His family could have sold it. Leo specifically said, when I'm gone, I want you to give this accordion to Joey. That means something. What that means is Leo saw in us, similar to the gentleman I got my fiddle from, they saw in us musicians that wanted to keep old-time music going and keep the message going. My fiddle is 306 years old. This violin came from an old-timer named Uncle Willie, who I met at the fiddle contest. And when I was about 12 years old, he gave me this violin, and I've been playing it ever since. Every time I play this, Uncle Willie is here. It's his voice. Every time I play this, Uncle Willie's father, Uncle Willie's grandfather and great-grandfather, this was their violin. It was passed down through their family. He had no children, so it came to me. I'm honored to have it. Again, every time we play that accordion, it's Leo's voice. It's all about keeping traditions alive, keeping the memories alive. And I find there's no better way to do that than through music. I've had the wonderful opportunity throughout my career to work with Alzheimer's and dementia residents at various nursing homes. I've done this for years. 4 years ago, I decided to make it my full-time position. The interest in it really began while I was employed at the Soldiers' Home in Holyoke. I worked there for 16 years. My grandpa went into the Alzheimer's unit. He did not recognize me. But when I took out that fiddle, boom, there was Grandpa, smiling, singing along. And I realized the power of what music can do. I've had oftentimes family members come to me and say, I haven't heard Frank's voice in years. He's nonverbal. But I come here when you're here because he sings, and I can hear his voice again. It's a powerful thing. So I'd love for all of us to join voices together today and do a little song that maybe, I don't think it's going to happen. I always promise the audience if you sing it with enough gusto and might, the sun might come out. I don't think that's happening today. But you know what? It's rainy and dreary out there. It's going to be sunny in here. You are my sunshine.
one more.
One more.
Then they're gonna have-
One more. I got my clock right here.
All
Watch it. All right, yes, spring has sprung. April's here. That rain's here. May, we are going to be in the thrust of those beautiful May flowers. But you know, this is also a time of new life, right? Seeing a lot more squirrels. I am. I've got dogs, so they seek them out. More rabbits. But most importantly, the birds are chirping again, letting us know that spring is here.
At this time, we're going to have a little bit of Grange business. They are taking a break. I can see why, their fans are probably killing them. Anyways, the first thing we're going to do is Corey is going to present a
Massachusetts State Grange President's Certificate proudly presented to Whately Grange. The Massachusetts State Grange offers congratulations for your 85th anniversary, giving us this day.
Thank you.
All right.
Do it without our staff. I mean, really, I couldn't. They hate me once in a while, but I get the work done. All right, right now I'm going to do a roll call of past masters. And I can say that we have one past master who is, I believe he's 95. He's not a member, but he's still alive. And in 1948, my sister was series of this Grange. She's not here, she's 90. She lives in New Hampshire. Okay, I am going to call on Adelia Bardwell, past master. John S. Hannum, past master. My partner in crime, Pam Alice Gale. I think that's up. Tom Watson. Thank you, Tom. And myself.
All right.
I would like to have Amber come and give kind of a short history of what we had before 414. We're number 2.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to Whately Grange for 85 years of service to the community. As Sister Ruth said, before this Whately Grange, there was one in existence earlier on. The very first Grange in this town was organized in December of 1911 and was Whately Grange number 304. At the time when they were organized, they had 78 charter members. They also met in town hall. The membership of the original Whately Grange grew pretty steadily over the first few years. And by the end of 1914, they had 180 members. While they had a large number of members, their typical meeting attendance was only roughly 20 or 30 people. But they were very active in the community, and they had a lot of really interesting and exciting programs. So they did a lot in town for the short period of time that they existed. They raised money for different causes. They sent their officers to the State Grange Conference each year. So they were very active. Some of the programs that they had within their meetings for the community, they held typical discussions and debates, which were very common in Granges at that time. They would have debates among the members about different topics of the day, such as one of them that I found in looking at their records was, how much should children do outside of school hours? Another debate was, how much should a woman know of her husband's business? Yeah. And during World War I, or actually right after World War I, they held a public discussion about the League of Nations, which is what was created after World War I, before the United Nations, which was after World War II. They had a public discussion about the League of Nations and whether the U.S. should join. The Grange did support the U.S. joining, but the country never did. Other programs that they held that were popular, a children's night was a regular event, and they would hold fun events for the kids. One of the things they did a lot was a peanut hunt, kind of like an Easter egg hunt. It was in spring. They had musical entertainment similar to today. They had, there was mentions of a ladies' quartet that would perform, a violinist and soloist. And they also brought in speakers from outside their local Grange to have different educational programs, such as people from Franklin County Farm Bureau, a presentation about the origin of the Mohawk Trail. They had a speaker from the New England Telephone and Telegraph Company, and as the secretary recorded, that speaker gave a, quote, a lecture of most instructive and interesting facts on the wonders of the telephone. They also hosted congressional candidates to come and speak during their meetings, and they had a superintendent of schools give a presentation about the school system. So they did a lot of interesting things for the community. For those of you who are familiar, who are members of the Grange, they also had an annual address by Charles M. Gardner. He was from Westfield, Mass, and was a very important official in the state and national Grange, holding the position of High Priest of Demeter at the national Grange level from 1913 to 1947. So he came and spoke annually, brought in a big crowd. Those meetings usually had over 100 attendees. They also did community events for the public outside of their regular Grange meetings. In 1916, they started holding an annual Grange ball. They held summer clam bake fundraisers, donated to causes such as the State Grange's Educational Aid Fund, which is a scholarship fund, the Red Cross. They provided prize money for the Boys and Girls Club affair, and they also donated $10 to the East Whately School's Victrola Fund in 1920. In 1917, they worked with the selectmen to help place signs around the community as they put to advertise the town. In 1919, they passed a resolution that they sent to the State Grange for action, which was supporting a Senate bill to raise teacher salaries across the Commonwealth. I looked into that at the state level, and they never actually acted on it at the state Grange because that bill was passed before we even got to the state Grange meeting for that year. So many Granges had put in support for that particular bill. I also found some records that they held a Grange fair on a couple of occasions. Actually, it was 4 years, 1921 to 25. Very little was recorded in their records about it, but in one year they noted that they raised $43.08. Doesn't sound like much, but in today's money, that's about $780. So not bad. So despite all the work that they did, they only lasted for 14 years. They were a very active Grange for a short period of time. The first mention I noticed in their records about having any kind of issue that would lead to their closure was in October of 1924 when they said, quote, "The conditions of Whately Grange were discussed and what the state Grange could do to help." They didn't say anything specific. The only other thing I noticed was their attendance was regularly fairly low, and they had many officers that were missing meetings. Early in 1925, they mentioned having a discussion about trying to catch up members that were delinquent on their dues. But by the end of 1925, the 2 meetings in December of that year, the first meeting, in December 1st of 25, they had a discussion about what to do with the property that the Grange owned if it were to close. And they also authorized the master, now president, to appoint a committee to, quote, bring in a list of officers for 1926. So December was the time of year when they held elections. So they were looking to try to recruit people to take the offices. At their second December meeting of that year, they reported that they were unable to find enough officers for 1926, and they voted to surrender their charter and to stop operating as a Grange. They made that decision and also discussed what to do with the money. They did mention doing some things in the town, which I think many of you might find interesting. I don't know if these things actually happened because I would have to see the town's records to know this, because the Grange's records end abruptly at that point. They noted that they were going to give $50 to the town to be known as the Grange Gift Fund to support the perpetual care of the Soldiers Monument. So that's referencing World War I soldiers because of the timing. And to use the balance of their treasury toward the dedication exercises for that monument. They also said they were going to give the balance of their floral fund to give flowers to what was then called Dickinson Hospital. Their dishes and silverware to the Ladies Benevolent Society. Their furniture was given to the town, and the flag was left in Town Hall. So they did give what they had to the town to support the town. When they closed in December of 1925, they had 90 members on the books. Wow. So a lot of members, but they weren't getting enough people to keep things going. So despite the fact that they were a very active Grange, they only lasted the 14 years, but as we know, 15 years after that, Whately Grange was reorganized and is still going strong. So thank you for inviting me to share this information tonight.
Celia will present the 414 history. Thank you.
On April 29, 1940, 57 interested in forming a Grange met, and later 29 were added, making a total of 86 charter members to start the Whately Grange. Names that we would recognize as part of that group were last names Graves, Dwight, Robinson, Dar, Waite, Wood, and Scott. In 1943, produce was raised from Victory Gardens and they recorded 3,279 quarts and 4,206 pints were canned. For many years, the Grange Bowling League was attracting many members, and people joined just to go to the bowling league. And that was formed in 1948, and they met every Tuesday night over in Amherst. We were part of a softball league, and in 1951, 108 went to Boston on free chartered buses. We earned money by having card parties, and the 12 card tables, some of them are in use today, were purchased, and they're still in a case up at the back of the hall. We entered three-county fair in Northampton, Franklin County Fair in Greenfield, and the Cummington Fair, and we were privileged to have lots of winnings with exhibits over many years, earning premiums that added to our treasury. In 1956, we won a first prize in a play contest that some of the people would remember being involved in that. 122 people, our children, got polio shots in 1957. In the 1950s and 1960s, the Grange arranged for well child clinics. Christmas trees were fireproofed and a skating rink was flooded on Roop's farm in 1958. In 1965, 36 candidates joined the Grange. We contracted Ted Parzik, a local carpenter, to build a kitchen in the community room in 1969, and that was taken out when the town hall was renovated for the way it is today. We arranged for a bicentennial observance, which was attended by 300 people when our bicentennial took place in 1971. The youth building, which is now our police station, was supported by our members, and it was dedicated in the memory of Richard LaSalle in 1976. Members were involved with renumbering the town's property. Community service has always been important. The state road was cleaned by several of our members, and there was a sign on the side of the road that said Whately Grange was doing that. We conducted a paper drive to raise money to help purchase a Jaws of Life for the South County EMS use. When a storm damaged the center cemetery, Granges set about repairing and painting the picket fence. After a house fire, dishes were washed. Remember that, John? You brought your friends' dishes to the church, and we washed them and then brought them back to the owners. I think it was even that same year, but very shortly thereafter, the Sandersons' farm suffered pollution and in their water, and many of our members went over and rallied to clean up the mess that was left from that disaster. I still use a cookbook that was sold at that time for $3. Many graduates of Frontier Regional High School have received scholarships over the years. For many years, we honored someone with a Citizen of the Year award. After the Legion was unable to organize the annual Memorial Day parade, the Grange assumed that responsibility, and this continues to be in effect today. State sashes have been worn by several of our members: Fred Bardwell, Neil Sanderson, Carolyn Munier, Jeanette Roberge, Stephen Hannum, Tom Watson, Adelia Bardwell, and Ruth Leahy. The Grange has meant much to many in the past, and as we progress into the complex future, may it continue to leave fond memories in the hearts of all patrons of husbandry.
We are now going to give out the awards, membership awards.
So she's unable to be with us, but we'll ask John to take it to his mother. The Order of Patrons of Husbandry, this certificate of 75 years of steadfast, faithful, and devoted membership is awarded to Louise Hannah in fraternal recognition of the contribution to the development and accomplishments of the Grange as a society of service. Cindy Magdalinsky. Dear Cynthia, congratulations on 60 years of continuous Grange membership. As part of the Grange family over the past 60 years, I am sure that you have been blessed with many friendships and lots of cherished memories. We each bring our gifts and talents to the Grange, and your Grange is stronger for your membership. I wish you many more wonderful adventures on your Grange journey toward your next milestone. On behalf of the Massachusetts State Grange family, I extend our appreciation for your commitment to the Grange and offer our best wishes for many years to come. And here is the sticker for your book. You're very welcome. Andy, would you like to come up? This is Golden Chief Certificate number 16,208, issued by the National Grange of the Order of Patrons Husbandry in recognition of 50 years of continuous Grange membership. Certifies that Andrew Malanick has been enrolled in the permanent records of those who have devoted a half-century of service to the order, to agriculture, and to mankind. Issued at Washington, D.C., the 20th day of February, 2025. And this will say pretty much the same thing. But also, congratulations on 50 and 55 years of continuous Grange membership. Enclosed with this letter is the first seal for you to put in your newly presented Golden Chief Certificate. We also wish you well on your Grange journey and thank you for your contributions to your Grange.
Wake up, John. You're next. Come here. And bring Keith with you. Keith. Yeah, you guys are bookends.
So, John, we congratulate you on 55 years of continuous Grange membership. And thank you for all the gifts and presents you brought to your Grange, and I give you the seal to go in your book.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You are important.
And fire chief. And you're a captain in the fire department. Deputy, or whatever, in the fire department. Be nice to him, we need him sometime. Keith.
Dear Keith, congratulations on 45 years of continuous Grange membership. Thank you for your dedication to the Grange and for all you do. We congratulate his brother Robert Bardwell on 40 years of continuous Grange membership as well. LaDonna. We would like to congratulate you on 40 years of continuous Grange membership and wish you well on your way to your next milestone. And here is yours to put in your seal to put in your book.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And Sister Bruce, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having all of us. Thank you for you and your committee putting together this wonderful event. And congratulations on 40 years of continuous Grange membership. We wish you well on the journey to the next Grange milestone. And keep up the great work.
Thank you very much.